Hello and welcome to Norwich Talk. Today I'm going to be bringing you a new series that's hopefully going to be quite regular on the channel. Given how frustrated we're getting with the first team's fortunes, we're going to start looking at the players that have been exported on loan and how they're getting on at their clubs. Today I thought we'd start by looking at sort of how the whole season so far has gone for Norwich's loanees and how they've been developing. Most of them are sort of young players that the club wants to develop. There's a few like the recently departed Josip Dulimic and players like Tim Closer who have been sent up because they're just not going to get the game time. But for the majority, it's sort of exciting young players who hopefully we'll see in the first team soon. So I thought that it will be interesting to look at how they're developing in first team football. So we'll start with Tyrese Omotoye, who recently sealed a loan move to Swindon. He's made 2 appearances so far, started one of them, and I think generally they've been quite impressed. He hasn't scored yet, unfortunately, but he's a player who will be fresh on the fans' minds, given he made 3 substitute appearances for Norwich before leaving. His departure made room for Sebastian Soto, who has gone straight into the under-23s. I watched him play against Crystal Palace's under-23s, and it was a 4-0 loss, so it's hard to gauge sort of his quality as a striker, but he did have a couple of moments when you could tell he had quality. He looked like he was the type of player who wanted to run at players and make things happen, not necessarily just a 6-yard box type striker. He wanted to go at players and show his skill, and that really intrigued me because it's sort of the opposite of what Teemu Pukki is at the moment. So he was out on loan at Telstar before. Obviously we would have been covering that, but now that he's back at the club, there's no need to do that from now on. But you can go and check out my video on him returning to the club for a little bit more about how he got on. He was at Telstar, who Dan Adshead, another Norwich City youngster, is also on loan at and has stayed there till the end of the season. Adshead was bought for £300,000 in the summer of 2019 and went out on loan at Telstar last summer, having had a year with the under-23s. So far he's played 20 games and got 3 assists, and I think he's impressed their fan base quite a lot. I think they were disappointed to see Soto go and to come back to Norwich, but I think they're really pleased that they've got him until the end of the season. Obviously the Eredivisie isn't the highest of levels, so it's difficult to guess at how quickly he'll be ready for the first team, but you'd think maybe next season he'll be ripe for a sort of EFL loan, hopefully League One or maybe even the Championship if we manage to get promoted. Another player who the club have high hopes for is Akinfenmewo, a 23-year-old centre-back who's gone out to Charlton. He's really impressed there, I think, but he's only ended up playing 9 games due to injury. His last appearance was on the 5th of December, but he's back in training this week. He didn't make the matchday squad today, but you'd think he's going to be in contention in the next few games because he really impressed for them, contributed to 6 clean sheets in a row towards the start of their season and really sort of got the ball rolling for quite a good season for them so far. Defence has been their strong point for quite large periods of that. But when they've conceded their most goals, it's been when Firmeo's been out of it. So really encouraging signs from him. He's one of the ones, with his age, you'd like to say he's getting close to the first team now, and you think, it's getting to the stage where if he isn't ready in the next couple of years, it might turn into a sort of Carlton Morris type situation where they're sort of just running him down, running his contract down and seeing when they can get a permanent move for him. But I think currently, and from what I've heard, the club is still keen on him and they still think he's going to be able to contribute pretty soon to the first team. I thought maybe he would have been ready for a sort of backup role in the Championship this season, but they obviously thought it would be better for him to go and get some first team experience. And I think in Charlton's best team, he is, when he's fit, he is one of their best centre-back options, so really encouraging from him so far. One of the more interesting cases in the Norwich City loan stable is Sam McCallum, who I think the club expected to be ready to contribute to the first team when he came in the summer. Obviously signed in January but loaned back to Coventry in League One, but he's gone back out to Coventry. They obviously thought, and I thought from his pre-season, that maybe he wasn't quite ready yet to contribute to the first team, which was a shame given the amount of money invested in him, but he's still young and there's still time for him to develop, and he's been really good for Coventry. I think he's been probably more versatile than we originally expected. He's played on the right wing and right wing back and also at left wing back in Coventry's new sort of 5 at the back system. They do change their tactics and formation quite a lot more than Norwich, so that's probably a good experience for him to try out playing in different positions and to learn different things about the game. I'm still confident that he'll contribute something to us in the future, although the fact that we've now got two left backs in the club, two natural left backs, plus Jacob Sorensen, who is a midfielder but has proven to be a really able deputy, leaves McCallum probably fourth choice when he comes back. So I expect us to only sign one of Quintia and Yanulis, who is an obligation to buy. So it looks like Quintia is probably less likely to sign for us permanently. So McCallum maybe will come in a backup role next season, hopefully in the Premier League, although that Swansea result has sort of derailed that a little bit. But I'm sure Norwich fans are still confident of getting promoted, but that maybe doesn't bode well for McCallum because it doesn't look like he's quite ready to play regularly in the Premier League yet. But he's proven himself on Championship level, and I would think he's ready to contribute, at least as a backup for the future. Two players that have been on loan at the same club are Daniel Sinani and Melvin City, who were at Belgian club Varslan Beveren. Sinani has had a much better time of it than City, who's now returned to the club and is playing for the under-23s. He really impressed me in that Crystal Palace game, so hopefully that was just a sort of fluke and a strange situation at Varslan Beveren. I haven't heard anything about any attitude problems or injuries, so it looks like they just didn't quite think he had the quality, which is alarming a little bit. You'd think the Belgian Pro League is probably not too far off the Championship in terms of the standard. It's probably a little bit better, but a little bit more inconsistent. I think its worst teams are probably worse than the worst teams in the Championship, but its better teams are probably better than the likes of Norwich and Swansea and Brentford. So, it's not great when you look at City, but it's been much better for Daniel Sinani, who's been deployed in various different roles there, sort of attacking midfield, winger, striker. He hasn't been prolific. I think he scored 2 goals at Varslan Beveren so far, but they clearly think he can contribute, given they were willing to do a deal with Norwich to return City. But they held on to Sinani. You can tell that they want him there and that they feel he's contributing to them. So I know there's a lot of Norwich fans excited about him, and he does seem to be doing well, although he is getting a little bit older now and probably not one of the players where you'd say, oh, he's a young player, he needs to get experience. He's already got quite a lot of experience, and you'd hope that the club can find a place for him in the first team next season. One of the more experienced loan exports from Norwich at the moment is Tim Klose, who's out at Basel in his home country, Switzerland. He seems to have been doing well. He scored 2 goals so far this season, and he did have a bout with COVID-19, but seems to have recovered from that well and doesn't seem to have any long-term symptoms or anything, so that's good. Interestingly, he's playing alongside Ricky van Wolfswinkel, who was obviously famously signed for a club record fee in 2013, scored 1 league goal for the club, but he seems to be doing really well there. There was one game recently where Klose and van Wolfswinkel scored in the same game, and quite a lot of Norwich fans on Twitter were enjoying that and retweeting that and talking about that, so that is interesting. It feels like Klose's time at Norwich is coming to an end, really, which is a shame because he's been great for us, and I'm sure he'll go down as a sort of semi-legend at Norwich, and that's to his credit. Despite the amount of injuries he's dealt with, he does have real quality, and I'm glad he's showing that with Basel at the moment. Player who was exiled along with Drumic was Tom Tribal, who has gone out on loan to Blackburn and has been doing okay for them. I'm not sure he's fully fulfilled what they expected of him when he arrived. I think Tony Mowbray said watching him in training was like watching Christian Eriksen, but I'm sure if he had Christian Eriksen, he'd be starting more than sort of half the games, which is what Treble seems to be doing. He's sort of a squad player at the moment, starts some games, not necessarily first choice, but he does start a few games, and it's been hard to track his progress, really. He's not the type of player where if he scores a goal you see it on Sky or whatever, because he doesn't really score and he doesn't really play like that. He's more of a subtle type player, and I think we have missed his quality maybe in midfield, and he's been a different option for us in previous seasons. And I know there's a lot of talk about his lack of athleticism and his lack of sort of hard tackling or penetrative passes, but I still think he was a player of real quality, and we could have used him. Blackburn are now using him in their squad. Maybe their sort of lack of use of him, their sort of the fact that he isn't starting every game for them, maybe shows that he couldn't have contributed too much to Norwich, given they're currently the top side in the Championship. But you just wonder, especially with how things are going at the minute, and with the need for things to be refreshed, you wonder if a player like Treble or even Leitner, who's still at the club but couldn't find a loan move, could contribute to us. An interesting case is Archie Mair, an under-19 Scottish international, a goalkeeper who we signed from Aberdeen and loaned to Kings Lynn Town. They play in the National League, which is the 5th division, and he's played 14 games from this season, got 4 clean sheets and picked up a Player of the Month award. Really, really impressing for them under Ian Culverhouse's stewardship. And I think he's one of the players who maybe is the most exciting out on loan currently. Only 19, is really young for a goalkeeper, and I've been told there's really high hopes for him within the club. I think maybe of all the young keepers which Norwich have in their club, there's him, Aston Oxborough, John McCracken, Joe Rose. There's more that I'm forgetting, but obviously Dan Barden as well. There's a wealth, but I think he's the one who they really see as the best at the moment. Very young and has a lot of time to progress. And the thing to note, although the National League isn't the highest level, the thing to note is that for goalkeepers, the impact of the level is much smaller than it is for outfield players. National League experience is of much more value to a 19-year-old keeper than it is to a 19-year-old centre midfielder, say, where the defending is worse, there's more space, the pitches are worse, because for a goalkeeper the job doesn't really change too much. Obviously he'll have sort of better finishes to deal with, or more consistent finishers to deal with higher up the leagues, but in terms of the skills that he's practicing for Kings Lynn, I think given their league position, they're sort of battling relegation but quite well. I think the type of action that he's seeing and the regularity of action that he must be getting involved with is really encouraging, and hopefully he can match those high hopes and he can do really well for Norwich in the future. There are a number of other players out on loan, but they're quite a lot younger, so the levels they're playing at have been their seasons have been up and down, and some of them have been curtailed due to the coronavirus. So there's a wealth of those sorts of players who aren't quite at that level yet. I'm going to try and focus more on the players who we might see in the next 1 or 2 years at Norwich, or who are of particular note or interest. There's no doubt if they do something amazing, the players at the less the smaller clubs will be included in this. If they score a hat trick or 5 goals in one game, or if they keep 10 clean sheets in a row, say. But for now, I'm just going to focus on those players. Hopefully that was quite an effective roundup of how they've been doing so far. I'm going to try and get these loan roundups out relatively regularly, maybe every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So if you enjoyed that, look forward to these. Thank you for watching, and for more great Norwich City content, head over to norwichcity.myfootballwriter.com.